Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nightmare Stories from the Other Side. Today, as our guest, we have Mitch Goth, who has been a paranormal researcher since 2009 and has conducted over 250 paranormal investigations. Since 2022, he has been the head writer and researcher for HauntedUS.com, where he has published 170 plus articles detailing the history and paranormal claims of purportedly haunted places across America. Welcome, Mitch, and tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes.
So I have been like the biography said. I've been a ghost hunter, paranormal researcher since 2009, and I got my start basically in the southern Wisconsin region where I'm from. I had just some friends down the street from me who went ghost hunting all the time, and one day they just asked me, "Hey, you want to go ghost hunting with us this Saturday?" And I thought, "Hey, interesting thing to do on a Saturday, I suppose." And up until then, I really didn't think much about ghosts or hauntings at all. It wasn't that I didn't believe in them. It's just I really didn't think about them that often. But one evening of going out ghost hunting in a old mansion turned restaurant turned abandoned building made me interested in it basically every day since then. And it's just been a constant adventure and of exploring new places and new things over the last 16 years now. And especially over the last 3 years that I've been working pretty actively with Haunted US.
So when they first reached out to you to go, what was the first location? You said it was a haunted mansion.
Yeah, it was so it was built as a mansion down in Beloit, Wisconsin, which is just north of the Illinois state line.
Yep.
Um, and the mansion was actually in South Beloit, so it was probably inches from Illinois. And when it was built, it was pretty much just surrounded by farmland, and this really prominent family in Beloit built the mansion back then, and purportedly the family had its share of troubles and untimely deaths on the property and in the mansion. And over time, the family lost track of their massive estate, as sometimes happens. And the house was converted into a pretty ritzy kind of supper club in the 60s and 70s. And then that turned into a more bar and restaurant kind of setup with live music in the 90s. And then it closed for good, I think, in around 2002. So when the first time I went there was 2009. And so it had been closed for a good few years. And the exterior looked very old mansion-y. It was built to vaguely resemble the White House. The windows were different, but the front had a large columned promenade, and the back had a semicircular kind of porch section. So it looked kind of like the White House. But the inside was all just, ratty 90s design carpet. A long bar that looked about from the 70s. It had carpeting on it. And just wide open dining room spaces. So yeah, it was mansion on the outside, abandoned restaurant on the inside.
And what kind of experiences? Go ahead, Chad.
Is that place still open for investigations?
Unfortunately, no. At the time that we investigated, it wasn't really a open to the public kind of situation. We just happened to know somebody who owned the building, so they were kind enough to let us in numerous times. The group I started with had been there probably 10 times by the time I started, and we went about half a dozen more times until 2013, when unfortunately the building was torn down. The property is like a bank or something now, and I like to say it's probably the most haunted bank in Wisconsin because of the mansion that used to be there.
So what kind of experience did you have when you were there?
Yeah, so the very first time I went ghost hunting, my first time out there, we set up on the second floor dining room, which was essentially just the whole second floor, just big, wide, empty room. All the furniture had been moved out long ago. So it was just us. There was a little kind of wait staff area, and we set all of our equipment there and kind of spread meters and devices out. I really didn't know what any of it was, so I just kind of watched at the time. But I learned later all of these things. Very simple EMF detectors, old sort of analog structures. I always forget their names, but it was the era pretty much before Mel meters. So there were some strange conglomerations of meters that they had. One of them carried around a K2 and one of the very old K2s where you had to hold down the button the entire time to keep it on. They jammed a couple quarters in it to keep it going, and they basically spread out these EMF detectors throughout the upstairs. And they didn't light up, but they did make a little bit of noise when they went off. So everyone was sitting and waiting to hear from them. And then they started an EVP session. And once again, my very first EVP session. So I just kind of watched and listened. But they gave me this kind of like a bionic ear, this little kind of microphone situation that you put in your ear. And so maybe when a spirit responded, I might be able to hear it in real time. And we all kind of conglomerated around the central staircase for this EVP session. Because right in the middle of the dining room was this one staircase that went down to essentially the what used to be the house's foyer, now basically the restaurant lobby. And so we all kind of conglomerated around that area. And all the seasoned investigators were asking their questions, leaving their long stretches of time between the questions. And I was just sitting on the top of the steps and listening. And over time, in that microphone bionic ear I had in my ear, I started to hear something from downstairs, down in the first floor dining room and bar area. But it was hard to place. It wasn't really any single thing in particular. And what ended up happening over question after question, this sound developed, and I started to realize it wasn't just somebody talking down there. It was everybody talking down there. It was the overlapping kind of sounds of a full restaurant. You can't really hear anything in particular, but you can tell just this cacophony of sound. And the more I listened, I couldn't make out anything in particular, but it stayed like vividly there in my ear for a good few minutes. And so that was basically my first real unexplainable experience, is where did all that sound come from? And nobody else was hearing it. The recorders didn't pick it up, but in that little device in my ear, I could hear very clearly a crowded restaurant downstairs.
Sure.
And that night ended with another very vivid, unexplainable experience. And right as we were wrapping up the investigation after a few hours there, we started one last EVP session, and just a couple of seconds into it, the sound came through the second floor dining space, and it sounded like this very distant whining noise. And everybody in the room, except for me, identified it immediately as that's the sound our EMF detectors make. So we searched through the space, and we found this one space in the corner where they had set one of their tri-field EMF detectors. And we all get around it. Someone has to click on a flashlight because it's not lighting up or anything. And we look at it, and it's not doing anything. It's not reading anything at all. And the whole time we're looking at this, the whine is continuing. The whine is seemingly coming from this area, but the meter itself is not doing anything. And the more we listen to it, the more we realize it's not quite so much a whine as it is a distant screaming sound. And we continue searching for about 30 more seconds, trying to find the source of this scream that is seemingly coming from somewhere inside the building. And we can never pinpoint it. And then it just kind of tapers off. And that it never reappeared. We couldn't find it. But that is essentially where my first investigation ever ended. And we went back there a few more times and experienced some truly unexplainable stuff each time. And it was always a joy to go there. And I think going there as my very first paranormal experiences, paranormal investigations, really, really helped make me impassioned about it.
Okay. So then after that, when you were getting into the paranormal and really had the bug for it, where did you go to next to investigate?
So after I got the hankering for it from that old mansion, I spent a lot of time going to, I guess you could call it simpler places, more accessible places, cemeteries, supposedly haunted roads. We have a good couple of those in my area down in Wisconsin, and just kind of going out there with friends as I could find time and people who were interested in it. We would go out to those places a lot and look for ghosts. I bought my own recorders, EMF detectors, and things like that, to essentially run through the full process with anybody I could find who wanted to do it. And one of my first major kind of trips to a location was down to Scotch Grove, Iowa, to Edinburgh Manor in 2011, I think was the first time. And that was another place that was just fantastic that I really enjoyed visiting and investigating a lot. And so I ended up going back there a few more times between 2012 and 2013. And then I've been back to it more recently a couple of times. It's pretty much 3 or 4 times since the pandemic. So that was kind of a distance, but a reasonable little road trip to go to a haunted location. And that obviously traveling has become a very big part of it. And I think that my first excursions out to Edinburgh Manor and Scotch Grove really, really shaped my enjoyment for that as well, because it is a really remarkable location out there in
definitely
rural Iowa.
We're going out there next Sunday.
Yeah, we'll be there on Easter.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes.
Excellent.
And no pun intended, we're going to leave some Easter eggs behind.
Yeah, you have to if you're out there on Easter.
Yep. But yeah, that was my very first investigation about a year ago.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And it's like when I left there, it was like 2:30 in the morning. I'm like, when do I get to come back here? When do I get to do this again? I was like instantly hooked.
Yeah. But what a location to have your very first investigation at. It's there are a lot of places in Iowa that have lots of ghost stories. People always say Iowa's just a lot of flat cornfield, but there's lots of ghosts and ghost stories out in the cornfields. And Edinburgh Manor is such an interesting location because it used to be so many different things. You get the old poor farm, you get the old mental institution, you get the old nursing home, and you can still find so many signs of all of those different lives in the building, and hopefully spirits from all of those different times still in the building.
So your first time there, what kind of experiences did you have?
So my very first time there was actually kind of a quiet night. But it was my first time out at, essentially an old asylum. So it was fantastic just to see. I went out there with a team based out of the area, which I don't think is together anymore. But they had been there a couple of times already, and it had just closed in 2010. I think it was either 2009 or 2010 that the actual facility closed up. So I don't know if they were the very first ones to go out there, but they were pretty early on. So this was their 4th or 5th experience there. So it was another sort of night where I took a observation role because they had a lot more equipment than I was used to working with at the time. They had the full DVR system where you had to run, yards and yards of cords through a building to connect all these closed circuit TV cameras together. So that was interesting to see. The experiences throughout the night, it started out very quiet and it stayed that way a lot of the evening. But shortly after midnight, up on the second floor, things started to respond to us. We would do the classic 2 bits knock, shave and a haircut, 2 bits. And the spirits or something up there would consistently finish that knock for us. And as we continued on with that, we moved from room to room, and it just kept happening. And we put motion detectors out in the hallways. They didn't make noise, but they lit up with very bright blue light whenever anything passed in front of them. And similarly to the knocking, those lights would come on and shut off in response to our questions. For about 30 to 45 minutes that went on, and before it ended up disappearing. But that was probably the highlight of the first night. And the second night I was there, which was the following year, 2012, was definitely a legendary highlight for me. It's pretty much still up to today. It stands out as a remarkable investigation. Once again, on the second floor, we had set up their closed circuit TV cameras up on the second floor. And the second floor, as you guys know, but if anyone listening out there has never been to this place before, the second floor of Edinburgh Manor is just really a big, long hallway from one end to the other. And so to capture the entire hallway in night vision, the team put 2 cameras in the center of the hallway facing away from each other. Okay. So one would capture one half of the hallway and the other camera would capture the other half. And we went up there to do a very broad EVP session, basically throughout the entire second floor. And while everyone was doing that, I also had a old game camera, like a trail camera, that I lugged around to take infrared still photos with. And on the video feeds in that hallway, what that resulted in is the video feeds would capture part of the hallway in shadowy night vision darkness. And then my camera would flash to take an infrared photo, and the whole hallway would light up in night vision light. And then it would go shadowy dark again as the flash concluded and I got my photo. And so I took between 80 or 90 photos up there throughout the EVP session we were doing. And I didn't capture anything on the photos, but through my 80th to 90th photos, the tech we had down watching the video feeds in the headquarters we had, which was essentially in a lobby room right off from the front door, they radioed to us and said, "Hey, you guys got to come see what we just captured on the video feeds up there." So the EVP session ends and we all pile downstairs to see what the video feeds captured. And it was from one of those hallway cameras that was capturing one half of the hallway. I was around the area taking my photos, and so the video feed was just filming the hallway as lights would come in, and then the flash would go out. The flash would come in, and then the flash would go out. And then for one photo, the flash came out, and there was a figure standing right in the middle of the hallway, a young girl's figure, about, I want to say probably 7 or 8-ish based on the height, looking like they were holding something under their arm. And then the flash went out, and then the flash came back again.
She was gone.
And she was gone. And funnily enough, we stopped the video and really examined what was happening. And when I started taking my photos at the beginning of that EVP session, I called out to the spirits of the second floor that if they wanted to get their picture taken, they could come out into the hallway and stand underneath one of the exit lights. Then I would get a clear photo of them. And where was this girl standing? Right underneath one of the exit lights.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's always something I look for whenever I'm there. So yeah, it's one of those things that you always want to capture, and you're always happy when you do.
So after that, in between, what was that? You said 2012 up until you started with Haunted US. What are some other locations you investigated and experiences you had?
Yeah. So between 2013 and 2017, I was in college. So I was pretty busy with that. But luckily, I had the presence of mind to apply to a supposedly haunted college. The college was called, or is called, Antioch, in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and very old campus, very small campus, but built in the 1850s and made for 800 to 1,000 students. But by the time I had gotten there, it was only about 180 students. So there was a lot of emptiness on this campus, a lot of buildings that weren't being used, a lot of historic spaces that were just kind of mothballed. But importantly, a lot of those empty, unused spaces had pretty long-standing paranormal claims. And so I inquired with the school administration, if you're not doing anything with these buildings, can I ghost hunt in them? And they were shockingly okay with that. So I spent those years pretty much investigating those buildings, and graveyards, haunted roads in Ohio, all those other accessible locations in the area, and just exploring the lore of that region. I made it out to Post Town School, which I think that's Middletown, Ohio.
Yeah.
And did a day tour of Mansfield Reformatory over in Mansfield. Pretty far of a drive across Ohio, but certainly worth it getting out to the Ohio State Reformatory. That is an immense building, and it's just got to be seen to be believed, unless you're afraid of heights, because that place is kind of tough. The cell blocks are all freestanding, and they're about 5 stories tall. So once you get up to the top, it's just flat wall on one side. You got about 3 feet to walk, and then it's just a drop down to dark nothingness. But after that, I kind of fell out of ghost hunting for a little while. I'm also a pretty dedicated writer, so I ended up just writing a whole bunch after college, and not really getting out to do much investigating. But as I'm sure you guys probably know, once you start doing it, it's not something you can stay away from for too long.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so around the pandemic, I started to get more interested in it, and more locations were opening up to it, because they lost their foot traffic, and if they had ghosts, then they could get some revenue and some socially distanced visitors through ghost hunting groups. And so that really got me back interested in it. I started going on ghost tours to places that didn't used to do ghost tours, and basically once again finding anybody who was interested in my friend group to go on ghost hunts whenever I could get something scheduled. And then I connected with a group based out of Milwaukee called the Paranormal Investigators of Milwaukee, and I joined their group around 2021, and they got out to do pretty far-flung travels once or twice a year. And so I got out to some very interesting places with them, some more places out in Ohio, Madison Seminary, Fairfield County Infirmary, some places in Indiana, Indiana State Sanitarium was the big one there. And then that experience is actually where I met the founder and my fellow cohort working with Haunted US, Brandon. We were both part of that group at the time. And during a trip to Edinburgh Manor down in Scotchgrove, we carpooled together, and he kind of pitched me this idea of, I want to start a website of essentially just cataloging haunted locations and telling their stories, sharing their history, their paranormal claims, and essentially making the research process for other paranormal investigators and ghost enthusiasts out there, easier. Make a one-stop shop of information for America's haunted places. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. So that project started in 2020. Well, 2021 is when we really started working on it, but the website itself launched in 2022, and we've been pretty much achieving that goal location by location ever since then. We do the visiting both together and individually. We go out to all of these haunted locations. I'll collect all the research, write the articles, and Brandon will get the photos, the videos, and maintain all of the infrastructure that makes a good website great.
So for when that kicked off, what was the first location you researched for that?
Yeah, so the very first location that I researched for that was the Tinker Swiss Cottage in Rockford, Illinois. That was a place both myself and Brandon had been to before. So we had a decent amount of information already, some personal experiences and some research on the paranormal claims that we investigated in the past. And so it was just a matter of researching more into the individual family members who built this Swiss style cottage in the middle of Rockford, Illinois. Which, if anybody has not been to Rockford, Illinois, there's really no other Swiss style anything there except for this one very opulent historic house. And so that was the first one that I really researched for the purpose of writing to for the website. But the very first place we went out to investigate and do a formal site visit of, with the expectation of producing a Haunted US article out of it, would be the Sandwich Opera House in Sandwich, Illinois, which Sandwich is west of Chicago. It's not quite Chicagoland, but it's just outside of the broader Chicago area. And the Sandwich Opera House is a very interesting building. I very much enjoyed writing about it because I don't think there is another place quite like it. When they built it, the city wanted to build basically one of everything that they needed in one building. And so when it opened, it was the City Hall of Sandwich, it was the police station, it was the jail, it was the fire station, it was the city clerk's office, and it was an opera house. So the first floor was all the city spaces plus the jail. The basement was the fire department, and the whole big second floor, really second and third floor, was a large opera house. And that's that's basically how it went for decades. This was the city's everything building. And eventually the city functions moved out, the jail did move out. So now currently it's just an opera house and city hall. But between their performances and their regularly scheduled meetings and the things they still hold there, they do offer paranormal investigation. So we wanted to go out there and see this very unique building for ourselves, and it was quite the experience. It's such an interesting mixture of things. Even still, you can see things in the basement that were only there because the fire department used to be there. Currently the women's bathroom in this building was the old jail block. So the jail cell doors, the heavy concrete walls are all still there. It's very clearly, this was four local jail cells at one point. And of course, the opera house is still in perfect working order, well restored, and there are claims all throughout the building that are very well established. And the folks who showed us around and attended to us during our investigation were super knowledgeable. So we were able to build that article into something that is really informative, and as it continues to get readers, we're always happy to see that, because the Sandwich Opera House is is basically a picture perfect example of what we're trying to achieve with Haunted US. We obviously want to capture the really well-known haunted places too, the Ohio State Reformatories, the Trans-Alleghenies, the Moundsville penitentiaries out there. But we also want to inform people about the places they might not know about, the places that are more local, that people in Sandwich, Illinois might know about, that maybe haven't been on large TV productions or been featured anyplace else. We want to get those stories out and share them with as many people as we can, because we think that sometimes the places that aren't well known can be just as interesting or even more so than the places that are well known. So we want to share as many ghost stories as we can, big and small. We don't think there's anything about a ghost story anywhere that's uninteresting.
What's another really unique location that you've been to?
Yeah, really unique location. In terms of the locations themselves, I would say the Squirrel Cage Jail in Council Bluffs, Iowa, would be another very, very interesting location, because that is a rotary jail. And they were never super common, but now I think there's only 2 of them left, one in Council Bluffs and one down in Gallatin, Missouri. And what makes these places special is that rather than have a traditional cell block with like a hallway or anything involved, the cell block was this large circular kind of dome-like space. And in the center of that, there was the actual cell block. And the cells would be pie-like shapes, essentially forming this circle. And the entire cell block inside of essentially this large human-sized bird cage would shift and spin in a gear system. And so when they were built, this bird cage would just have the one door on it. And as you would put people in their cells, you would spin the cell block around so that only one person could ever get out of the jail door at once. The thought being it's super secure because you can only let one person out of this massive rotary system at a time. There's the possibility of massive jailbreaks is completely eliminated. But that also kind of makes it difficult if there's a fire or something. So that very quickly fell out of favor for that reason. And also with the ground spinning beneath you and the wall that you have to walk through, the doorway you have to walk through staying still, it creates a kind of scissor situation that frequently maimed prisoners and inmates. So it is a very fascinating situation to look at, and it's also a very morbid history to explore for a lot of reasons. And as unique as a place like Squirrel Cage Jail looks, the activity can be just as one of a kind.
So out of all the locations you've been to over the years for researching, what would your top 3 favorite locations be, and a top experience from each one?
Yeah, top 3. So I would say the first one is probably the Lincoln Tallman House in Janesville, Wisconsin. And the most interesting experience that happened that night was we were in the servants' quarters of the mansion, which was essentially a smaller kind of outbuilding, but attached directly to the back of the mansion. And we were trying to communicate with 2 servant spirits that were said to be there. And about partway through an EVP session we were having, everybody in the small space noticed a draft. So we all started looking for the source of this kind of cold blast of air. And we ended up finding it in the bathroom area. The whole sort of toilet system was a very old privy system, which is kind of like a 2-story outhouse. And so the toilets just opened up into this long shaft that led right outside. So air was blowing from through this and upstairs. So we found the source of this draft. But through the process of seeking out the debunking of this cold blast of air, one of our Brandon, my fellow cohort, had a flashlight click on in his pocket. Just a short little LED thing with a button on the back. It just clicked on in his pocket. So he's like, that's weird. And so he just figured it happened by accident, clicked it off, and put it back in his pocket. And a few seconds later, it clicked on again. And he started to think like, this doesn't seem so normal anymore. So we clicked it off, and we got to our EVP session again. And this time he kind of hooked it to his pocket so it dangled from the outside. And once again, a couple questions into our EVP session, it clicks on again. And so we're like, okay, you seem very interested in this flashlight. So here's what we're going to do. He clicks it off and he sets it on a little staircase that leads to the rest of the mansion. He sets it on the staircase and we all step away from it. And he offers, if you want to keep this flashlight, just click it on one more time from where I just set it. And for a few minutes, nothing really happens. And we go back to our EVP session. And then out of nowhere, it clicks on and the room fills with light from this flashlight. And so, being people of our word, we said goodbye to that flashlight and left it there. And the servants' quarters is just 2 bedrooms and a little hallway with a tiny desk in between the 2 bedroom doors. And so we left the flashlight in a drawer on that desk. And to our knowledge, the Historical Society, the folks that run the mansion, keep it there still. So it is a little artifact that now belongs to the spirits of the servants' quarters. So yeah, that is, it's tough to figure out whether that's number 1, number 2, or number 3, but it's definitely one of the top 3 experiences. And let me just think on another. Another good one is another haunted mansion story. Down in Jerseyville, Illinois, there is a mansion called Cheney Mansion. And this evening of investigating was very interesting for a lot of reasons. We at Haunted US, we are used to having a lot of handheld devices and not a lot of bigger pieces of investigating infrastructure, so to speak. So we use stationary cameras when we can, but we're not whole CCTV system investigators. But when you go and investigate at Cheney Mansion, they have a CCTV system that they offer investigators to use. So of course we use this preset system, and they have a purpose-built kind of nerve center area that has a large screen on the wall that shows you all the feeds from their cameras. So it's really, really structured around investigating, which is always great when that happens. It's a pretty rare situation that people prepare so well for visiting ghost hunters, and having that operational was great, and it offered us a lot of opportunity to investigate in ways that we usually don't. And so we started our investigation right around the time that really, really dark clouds were starting to move in to Jerseyville, which benefited us. We wanted it to be dark, and it was summer, so it was 7 p.m., but it was still kind of light outside. And so these dark clouds darkened everything up, and we started our investigation. And then the storms really, really came out of nowhere. They just sort of started, and it just kind of downpoured rain. The tornado sirens came on. It was the biggest vibe shift in an investigation I would say I've ever had, simply because the weather just turned very, very, very quickly. And this old house is wood frame, so as the wind blew against it, the whole house creaked and whined, which made EVP sessions kind of difficult. But we traded functionality for an eerie situation. And ultimately, luckily, there wasn't any massive tornado that came through. There wasn't any need to go down in the cellar for any reason other than ghost hunting. But that just made for a very uniquely perfect environment for what we were doing.
Yeah.
And the rest of the evening was activity wise very quiet, very quiet actually. And the caretaker that was with us was always talking to the spirits. After a couple hours, they were always talking to the spirits. Where are you guys? What's your deal? Why are you so quiet? And we got through probably 5 or 6 hours of investigating it with 4 or 5 of those hours being dead silent quiet. And at the very close to the end of our investigation, we had collected all the recordings that we felt that we wanted or needed. So we broke out a piece of equipment that we use sometimes just to see what will happen, and that's the Ovilus device. So I was running the Ovilus device while Brandon was shooting some night vision video up in one of the old bedrooms. And we called out a couple of questions and nothing really came out. And we asked, why are you so quiet, essentially? And the Ovilus said hide. So what are you hiding from? And it said video. It's like, oh, are you upset that we're taking video of you? And it said sorry, and then gone once more. So it was a very quiet night, but at least they may have come out and given us a reason why they decided to be quiet that night.
Yeah.
Is a level of courtesy you don't always get.
Yeah.
So that really helped make it a one of a kind experience. And probably number 3 would be, gosh, there are just so many. Number 3 would probably be, and I've been to this location numerous times, and I can never get enough of it. That would be the Mabel Tainter Theater in Menominee, Wisconsin, which is up not far from the Twin Cities, probably an hour outside of the Twin Cities. And stepping into the Mabel Tainter Theater is like literally stepping back into the late 1800s. The wallpapers and paints are original. The woodwork is original. The flooring is original. The windows are original. The pipes are original. They're not really water fountains because those weren't really a thing yet. But the literal fountains in the wall where people got drinks from are original. There's even a line of light bulbs above a fireplace that are, as they like to say at the theater, original. 130, 140-year-old light bulbs. So, I'm a massive history buff. So being able to go to a place like that is just intensely interesting every single time. But the claims there are really just as fascinating as the rest of the place, because it was built to be a memorial to Mabel Tainter, the Mabel Tainter Memorial Theater. And interestingly, Mabel Tainter never, of course, saw her memorial theater. She didn't live to see it. But because her death is the whole reason why it's there, her spirit is said to remain there. And over the times that I've been there, some fascinating stuff has happened. Mainly, there was one instance where we were investigating through a new addition to the property that they had built on around 2006 that had an extra staircase and an elevator in it. And we were up on the 3rd floor, the top floor of the theater, and something hissed through the darkness. It was the mechanism of the elevator. The elevator was coming to life, and it hissed and it groaned, and it started down to a floor. So everybody split up, ran down to the 2nd floor, ran down to the 1st floor, ran down to the basement. Everybody was was at one area of where the elevator could open up to, and it ended up opening up down in the basement, and nobody was in it. So right in the middle of our investigation, the elevator just kind of got called to a separate floor and opened to nobody and for nobody. And every time I'm there, something fascinating and interesting happens. The most recent time we were there, there is an old piano down in the basement that used to belong to Mabel Tainter, but it is very, very, very past its functioning date. It is basically expired. It doesn't make any noise. The keys don't really move, but from a couple of times throughout that night, you would hear one or two very, very clear, soft piano notes coming from the basement.
Nice. And then you were saying recently that you were at the St. James Hotel in Red Wing.
Yes.
Were you just researching it, or did you do any sort of investigating there?
For that visit, that was mostly just research. We had gotten a lot of information about it prior to our visit there from folks who had stayed the night and had experiences or booked purportedly haunted rooms and brought some ghost hunting equipment to see what they could see. But for our visit there, it was a lot of historical information that the folks could give us and photos of the space to go along with our articles.
Yeah, it is a gorgeous building.
It really is, and even the whole neighborhood it's around is just very interesting looking. It's a hotel that certainly matches the vibe of the town around it.
Yeah, I used to work there a long time ago. I never really had any experiences, but definitely, always got the feeling that I was being watched because I worked in the banquets department, so we get to go all over the hotel.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely felt like I was constantly being watched by someone.
Yeah, some spiritual supervisor.
Yep. Making sure I was doing my job right.
Yep.
So for researching and investigating this year, what do you have on tap?
So we have a couple of major projects that we're trying to work through this year. We already did one pretty sizable trip just last month. We went up to the Twin Cities area of Minnesota to cover as many different places as we could, because I had done a lot of research around 2021 when we were preparing to launch the site on haunted locations in the Twin Cities area, but a lot of them needed photos for our articles. So immediately they couldn't be written to until we had images to go along with them. So I had a lot of research done, talked to a lot of people. So we just needed to wrap it all together and make it look nice. So we took a trip up to Minneapolis, I want to say around March 20th or 21st, and stopped at, I want to 9 or 10 different places in the broader area. We touched on the St. James Hotel while we were in the area. We also did the Thayer Hotel and Restaurant up in Annandale. We did the Minneapolis Institute of Art, which is an amazing museum. Also very interesting claims in that place. We did Four Paws Restaurant in, I think it's Minneapolis. It might be St. Paul.
St. Paul.
St. Paul, yeah. We did First Avenue, the
nice
performance venue built into the Greyhound station. We did the Fitzgerald Theater, the Mounds Theater, the Warden's House Museum, which is just outside of the Twin Cities.
Yeah, out in Stillwater.
Yep, Stillwater. And we did a hotel just down the street from that, whose name is escaping me. Water Street Inn. There we go. We did Water Street Inn. And we also did the Leduc Mansion, which is a very fascinating house and museum. with some very, very nice folks running it. And I'm sure there's one or two in there that I am forgetting, but that was a big long whirlwind of visiting places, getting history, getting ghost stories from folks, and getting everything we need to round out our articles for that area. And just earlier this year, we took a big long trip through northern Wisconsin and stopped in Duluth to get a couple of locations in Duluth. We got photos and information on the Glen Sheen Mansion. And
Nice.
in fact, our article on the Glen Sheen just published, I want to say 2 weeks ago. So if anyone wants to know about the ghosts of Glen Sheen, you can visit hauntedus.com and check that one out right now. And we also did the William A. Irvin ship up there, old, I think just an old iron ore and coal ship, Great Lakes freighter, but now it's a museum, and it's got once again, some very interesting paranormal claims, some reports of EVPs speaking Spanish, and even a figure of a little girl, what's a little girl doing on a Great Lakes freighter? That's certainly a mystery, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so maybe some enterprising paranormal investigator out there can answer that mystery of the Irvin. But yeah, some fascinating places in Duluth, and our broader trip through Wisconsin was in service of a book that we have coming out later this year, hopefully in just a few weeks to a few months. That's essentially a paranormal investigator's road guide to haunted places in Wisconsin, and other pieces of Wisconsin lore and roadside attractions and oddities that might make for a good and well-populated road trip through the haunted happenings of Wisconsin. So we were all across the state between late last year and early this year, getting photos and other content for that finished work. So it is on its way to being wrapped up there. And then we're probably going to spend a good deal of the remainder of the year promoting that, visiting all those places, and of course selling as many of those copies as we can. Getting all the good ghost stories of Wisconsin out to the people, while also, of course, getting all the other 49 states covered slowly but surely through our Haunted US articles. And other than that, I know we have one other big trip currently planned, and that is down all the way through Illinois and through into Missouri. We haven't gotten the full list yet of all the places we're going to stop at on that big journey, but the final destination there is Pythian Castle.
Nice.
And so we are going to stop and investigate Pythian Castle, and both on the way down and on the way up, we're going to stop and tour as many other locations as we can.
Sure.
Sounds like a great trip.
Yeah.
They're always extremely busy, but they are always very, very, very fun.
Let's see. I don't think I have anything else in my notes. Chad, do you have anything at all?
No, nothing special.
All right. So the last thing we always do on our podcast is give you a chance to put out there where people can reach you on social medias, websites, any other links.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone interested in what Haunted US does can find us at hauntedus.com. We have new articles posting all the time. We post one every week, every Thursday. So Thursday around noon, if you're looking for something new and spooky, you can find it on Haunted US. We also have a podcast that launched late last year called Haunted Atlas. I like to think of it as an audiobook version of our articles. And you can find that wherever you happen to enjoy getting your podcasts. That's Haunted Atlas. And on social media, you can find Haunted US on Facebook at Haunted US. You can also find us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Haunted US. And we're also very active on Instagram as well under the same name, Haunted US. And if you are very, very into photography and have a Pinterest account, you can also find us there on Pinterest, haunted US.
All right. Sounds great. Well, we thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was a great time.
Yes, and we look forward to what's coming this year.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Bye.